everyone, it's Claire Jarvis here from Restore Fitness Therapies, and in this video I want to cover off a question that comes up an awful lot with our new mums, which is when is it safe and appropriate for me to start Pilates after I've had my baby? And it's a great question because we have so many women who are super keen to join us, which is absolutely fantastic, but of course we want to make sure, and you want to make sure, that it is safe and it's appropriate for you to start exercising again. Now in the UK, most women will get what we call a 6-week postnatal check, which is a very kind of short and rudimentary check to see that you are in good physical and mental health, and it gives you a little kind of tick in the box. Now a lot of healthcare professionals will use this as kind of their standardized way of saying that you are ready to start exercising again. Personally, I find it a very rudimentary kind of test, knowing what happens in those appointments. That it's not very thorough depending on who you see, and it's often not a very good indicator of whether a woman is actually really ready physically, emotionally, psychologically to start coming along to exercise classes. Everyone will have had a very different experience of pregnancy, of birth, that immediate postnatal period, and I think it's really important that we take all those factors into consideration. So to start physically, if you have had a vaginal birth and it was all, relatively kind of straightforward, as straightforward as birth can be, there were no particular complications, it may well be that you are ready to start joining for Pilates classes in person or online after about 6 to 8 weeks. That is possible. If you had a vaginal birth that ended up in the use of instrumentation, an episiotomy, or maybe you ended up having a significant tear, it may well be, and it's very likely, that you're going to need a little bit more time for physical recovery. And again, that is going to be very dependent on what actually happened during the birth, and also how your body is healing, because bodies will heal at slightly different rates there. So women who've had that experience may find that 6 weeks is too early. They may feel like 8 or 10 is more appropriate for them. So there's already a difference there, even in what appears to be a very similar sort of vaginal birth scenario. Now, that's just the physical side of things. A lot of women, unfortunately, do go through a much more traumatic birth experience. And trauma during birth is a very personal thing as well. What is traumatic to one person isn't to another, and vice versa. But if you've had a birth experience that felt traumatic to you, you may not emotionally and psychologically feel ready to start getting into physical exercise classes, even if your body is physically recovered. And I think it's really important that women do take that kind of psychological and emotional sort of factor into consideration as well, and don't force themselves into starting to do physical exercise when they're not in the right headspace to do it. So it's always something that I think requires a bit of consideration as well. Now, if you've had a cesarean section, you have had major abdominal surgery, okay? And so what that means is that you absolutely must ensure that all your internal and external stitches are fully healed before you start doing exercise, particularly something like Pilates, where we are focusing on those core abdominal muscles, because what we don't want to do is to start undoing those stitches again. Now, how long that takes, again, is very different between different women. The minimum period I've seen and heard about is about 10 weeks, where people have had a very, very good recovery. Their bodies have healed very, very quickly. But some women, it can take them 5 to 6 months to really feel fully healed, and for the doctors to be confident that everything is healed as well. I would say the average, in my experience, of all the women that I've worked with seems to be about 12 to 14 weeks. But what I hope this shows you is that there is no definitive line in the sand. There's no definitive tick box where we can say you are ready or you are not ready. It will depend on a lot of different factors. So basically, how you know when you are ready comes down to 2 things. The first thing will be medical advice, so from your doctor or your midwife. So when you're having physical checks, or you're going to them and you're discussing kind of your emotional well-being and how you're coping, you can say to them that this is something you're considering doing, you'd like to do, what is their opinion, and get their professional opinion. And the second factor is how you feel. We don't really get people kind of approach us for classes unless they're in a good physical and mental state generally, because you just won't feel like doing it. But it doesn't mean that just because you've been signed off by the doctor that you should then start throwing yourself into all these activities. There is absolutely no rush whatsoever, and there are plenty of things that you can do at home on your own that are really simple, which are going to start aiding your recovery before you dive into a physical exercise class, if that just isn't something that you feel physically, emotionally or psychologically ready for. So in conclusion, guys, basically there is no complete standard at which we can say, right, you've hit this number of weeks, you're good to go. It's going to be a combination of how you feel. It's going to be gaining professional advice. It's going to be weighing up the physical, emotional, psychological experiences that you have had during pregnancy, during birth and during new motherhood. So I hope that helps you to just kind of relax a little bit about thinking about getting back into exercise again. And in the next video, we're going to run you through all the wonderful things that you can be doing before you start exercising that are going to start making you feel physically, emotionally and psychologically better.